As you know, this is one of our Parent University series, and this one is on cyber safety, social media, digital safety, all of those exciting topics. We are lucky to have Bill Burke here from the Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office. So he is going to talk for a little bit, and then we're going to have Jim Birchfield, who is our Director of Instructional Technology, and also Melissa McGuire, who is our Student Services Director, is in another meeting, but she'll come near the end to talk about some of the more social emotional side of things, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. And hopefully we'll not keep you here much more than an hour, but feel free to save questions for the end, and we'll hopefully get all your questions answered. Thank you.
All right, great. So the District Attorney's Office has had a program in place for many years. I've been involved the last 9. What we do in the community outreach program is we usually go out and talk to the students. So in the last 9 years that I've been involved, we've gone out, and it's usually grades 5, 6, 7, and 8 that we talk to. Occasionally we go to a high school, but we prefer the younger group that listens to us. And we've spoken to probably about 20,000 students in that 9 years that I've been involved about their digital communication and how to use it properly and not get into trouble. Because the District Attorney, Michael O'Keefe, doesn't want to see the young people in court. So, he has a diversion program which can, make sure they don't have a record from minor offenses. In the diversion, they can work, take responsibility, do some community service, understand they made a mistake. So he's trying to educate the younger students so that they don't end up in the system by mistake. And to let you know, in the time period that I've been involved, when we go to those age groups, we talk to them, and afterwards we ask, what did you think of the presentation? And they're all amazed that I didn't know I could get in trouble for doing A, B, and C. So, now we try to educate them that, yeah, you can get in trouble. So just use it properly, good behavior. We talk to them about their student handbook in all the different districts, and none of them have ever read it, so they don't know what is expected of them in their schools until something happens. So we enjoy going out and trying to educate the younger students so that they don't make those mistakes. And in the time period I've been involved, the older kids, we talk about the sexting. We tell them that in Massachusetts it's still a crime and it's a felony. So, we try to have them don't get involved in that behavior. They are trying to change that law, but they've been trying to change it for 5 years. So whenever they get around to it, hopefully they'll change it. So, we just want to educate them. But it's, tough to see that they say they didn't know they could get in trouble. So what we have for you now is just some, guidelines you can go by. We're not experts in this, but, people make mistakes. In my other life, I was a town policeman and a state trooper, and retired and was bored because I have no hobbies. So I came back to work part-time, and people make mistakes. Good kids make mistakes. So we're just trying to have them not make those mistakes. And again, we talk to them, and we'll explain to you too all the different technology, and not really sure what's going to be developed in the next couple of years, but it's great tools. We just have to use them the proper way. And with the younger students, we talk about the gaming. And in that middle school group, they're all gaming. They're all on their Xbox or whatever else. And we tell them if it is hooked up to the internet, then you can communicate with anybody throughout the world. So again, you have to be careful when you're on even that device that you don't know who you're playing with unless it's a friend. So, big thing is they're not of age to sign a contract. So that device is really not theirs, the cell phones. It's not their cell phone. It's whoever signed the contract and gave it to you, a parent, a guardian, a grandparent. So, don't get them in trouble. And again, it's, cell phones came out, I think, when my children were just getting into high school, and they both got them when they went to high school. But, it wasn't like today. Today, hate to say it, from all the training we go to, third graders have cell phones. you know, a little too young as far as I'm concerned. But again, the contract is the adults, not the students. And again, things to watch out for, friends and followers. We go into these, say the middle school, and we'll say, how many people have, 300 friends? The hands stay up. How many have 1,000 friends? Most of the hands are down. But that's risky. You know, we go to Bridgewater State University has a section there, Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center, MARC, and they study this. So we go up every year for training. And their thing is high number of friends and followers is really risky business. Screen names. Again, you don't make it so simple. We'll talk to the students and we'll say, who's that screen? What's the screen name? Kate M.A., she's 13. And we'll go, right. So that's enough for someone to start a conversation with you is, where in Massachusetts are you? I live in Harwich. Okay, oh yeah, I vacation there. And again, it just gives someone that opportunity to know too much about you. So we try to tell them, don't put your biographical information in. Make something up that's simple for you to remember, but not that they can start a conversation with you. Posting, activities, locations, vacations. I'll tell them that, my son, probably 5 years ago, with 3 other couples, went to Captiva, Florida, rented a house. I said, I've been there a few times, send me some pictures. Sends me pictures, and it's got the 2 streets where they intersect on the photo. So I knew exactly where he was on the island. They have that technology in the photos. So if you're in your house taking a picture and it goes out there, there's a possibility that people could know where you live. So we try to tell them, be very careful about letting people know your activities, where you go, and don't let people know that you're not going to be home, or mom and dad aren't home. TMI, too much information. They all do it, and there's studies done where they all know they do it, but they still put all that information out there. Don't share your passwords. And again, we'll try to tell them that if a friend of yours knows your password and they do something wrong, who are people going to come to? It's going to be you, because your IP address is listed to your house. So they're going to be coming to you, and someone else might have done it because you gave all your information out. And again, the GPS apps, we try to tell them, take that off. Don't let people know where you are. Of course, never meet somebody that you only know online. And again, doing this the last 9 years, we'll talk about this with the students, and they'll go, oh, I'm going to take a friend with me. So that's great. So now 2 people could be in danger. So, don't do that. And anything that's anonymous, any of the websites, we say stay off them. If you don't have to say who you are, you shouldn't be on them, because people are very cruel and mean when they don't have to say who they are. So, we're just trying to educate them on what to do, and most of them listen. That's the one thing I have to say, is the age group that we talk about, the sexting. And again, 20,000 students we've talked to. We've had maybe 4 phone calls from the school resource officer of different towns say somebody wasn't listening to you. So that's pretty good odds. I think we're doing the right thing. I did give a handout with different apps, and they change every day. So this one says 16 apps after Facebook. I think I printed out one today that said 18. So they change every day. The ones that the students are using are the more popular ones. 9 years ago, we went in and said, okay, who's on Facebook? Everybody's hand went up. It was amazing. Now we go into that age bracket. Who's on Facebook? 2, 3, 4 hands go up, because they know you're all on Facebook. Okay, so they're not on it. They're on Snapchat. They're on WhatsApp. Omegle is how to meet friends, okay, which means how to meet strangers. So, again, you need to look at the different stuff that they're using. The new one now is TikTok, and TikTok's getting everybody in trouble because if you've been watching the news for the last 10 days, you can put like your charger for your phone in the electrical outlet and then drop a penny or a dime or a nickel behind it, and we all know what happens. Big explosion in the wall outlet, fire starts, and I've been watching on the news every day for like the last 10 days, and it just happened in Barnstable High School the other day. I think it was Whitman Hanson just had it done, and they charged the kid with a felony. Okay? That's not good to be charged with a felony at, 15, 16, 17 years old. So again, they see it from these, TikTok or YouTube or whatever else they're watching, and then they see what it does, but they still do it, okay? Because they're not mature enough to know that's going to get you in trouble. So again, it's, I guess, up to us at times to tell them, use your head. And this is on the one when we talk with the students and we say, what's the most dangerous four-letter word in the digital environment? And we have to tell them it's not a swear word because, believe me, we've had those words come back. And usually it takes about 2 or 3 before they come up with it. But it's a pretty simple word, send. Because once they send it, they don't have control. They can't do anything about it. So we tell them, think before you send. That's our big presentation is, like when my children were young, it would be count to 10, relax, let's see what's going on before you react. And we'll try to tell them the same thing is, take your time, think about it. They're texting quicker than their brain is working. And, watch what you say because you can't get it back. And that's the big thing we try to tell them is once you send it, it is out there forever. Okay? And you need to, take your time and see what you're going to do. And again, you lose control once you post something. Things can be altered. They can be, changed without your knowledge. And nothing's truly deleted. They all think that once they delete something, it's gone forever. It's not. Okay? If it's very serious, law enforcement can go in to whoever your provider is with a search warrant, and they can retrieve everything from your device. Okay? It's never truly deleted. So it's always there to be found if it needs to be found. And again, the older students, we try to tell them that, you have to be careful. What you might have done in middle school is clean up your stuff once you get into high school. Okay, because we all grow, we all mature. Something you did in 6th grade might be very silly and foolish when you're in 9th grade. So we'll tell them to clean up their profiles, what they're doing. And it's because of who's looking at it. We'll tell them that, if you're old enough to babysit, that might be your first job, that people are Googling the person that's going to be the babysitter. And if they find something there, you're not going to get the job. Okay? So even at, that age where you might not be legal to work yet, you are working, you're babysitting. So, employers look at it, colleges look at it. We'll explain to them that, on the one we do for them, that, people will get free rides to college. And it was Harvard was one of the most recent ones that, 10 people got into Harvard and they got onto some chat group and they were communicating between the 10 of them who were going to be incoming freshmen. This happened a couple of years ago. And what they were saying was inappropriate. Harvard found out, Harvard told all 10 of them, bye, you're not welcome. And we'll try to explain to the students, can you imagine working from kindergarten all the way through senior in high school to get into the college you want to get into, like a Harvard, and then doing something immature and foolish and it being rescinded? that now you can't go to the school you wanted to go to. So again, you know, one thing I didn't know until I retired and went to a lot of other different trainings is that the human brain doesn't totally formulate till about age 25, 26. Now, at 16, I knew everything. I didn't need to listen to my parents. But you know, you look at the science of it, 25 or 26 before you're really formulated as to kind of know what's going on. So again, we try to tell them it takes you time. And if you do something that's foolish at 17, when you're 27, it could come back and hurt you. And we use an example of a state rep from Massachusetts. He or she at 17 communicated with other friends, very immature, very inappropriate, very foolish. And at 27, after that person had already been elected to be that state rep for that area, somebody found it and they put it out there. Now, I would imagine the next time that person's running for re-election that he or she is going to have to explain that. Okay, but can you imagine things that people do at 16, 17 years old affecting them when they're adults? You know, I don't agree with it. People make mistakes, okay? But we try to tell them in today's world you have to be so cautious because of how difficult a world it is, that if you're going for a job in whatever profession you want to get into, so are thousands of other people. And if they don't have a mistake on their record, they're going to get looked at before you are. And you might be the better candidate. But, you know, you have to be aware of these things. And again, I'm sorry it's 2012, but they really don't update these stats that quickly for us. I'm going to think that it's probably another couple of percent higher, you know, versus 80. It could be 85. The college admissions could be a little higher that actually check it. You know, we'll tell the students, if you're thinking about a certain colleges, you should be following that college. You should be knowing everything about that school and using it to your betterment to help you. In a digital footprint, we tell them, you know, the last 5 years is your age bracket has a digital footprint. It's going to be out there and follow you, so keep your footprint as clean as it can be, because it will come back on you. You know, we talk to, we have two different presentations. The 5th and 6th grade is different. We don't talk about the last two. But at the middle school, we will, you know, our juvenile prosecutor, Eileen Moriarty, usually comes with us on those presentations. And she'll talk about these different crimes, like, you know, annoying phone calls. None of these crimes were made for our children. They weren't. They were made for adults. Okay, annoying phone calls, stalking, harassment. You know, those are serious. Well, I'm not sure about the annoying phone calls, but the stalking and the criminal harassment are serious. You know, you only need, you know, we'll ask them, how many times do you think annoying phone calls before you could be in trouble? You know, and they don't understand it's 3. Okay, 3 or more. You know, the stalking, we try to explain to them, is like if you watch TV and you see some guy hiding in the, you know, creepy guy in the bushes, you know, we'll explain to them that the stalking law was made because probably about 30, 35 years ago, adults that had been in relationships couldn't end, one person couldn't end the relationship, and people were getting hurt. So they made this law, and it's a serious crime in the criminal harassment. So, you know, you look at them, you know, we tell them that only like 3 incidents you could be in trouble, but it could be 1, depending on how the severity of it. Unauthorized access to a computer system, again, they're using it without the authority of the person. Personal identification theft was usually the financial stuff. Now it's if you use someone else's identity to open up a Facebook page, okay, that's illegal. That has happened where someone will say who they are and they are not that person. and they have, Facebook or whatever other app they have to communicate, and they're doing things that are illegal. Threats, that is the biggest problem that the juvenile court has been seeing over the last few years, is in today's world, everything you say is looked at. If you make a threat because you're upset with someone and the school hears about it, or the school resource officer, they are going to look into it. In my generation, they said they don't have the opportunity, they don't have the ability, they're only talking nonsense. And that's about as far as it went. In today's world, everything is looked at. And we'll explain to the students, be careful what you say. Words can get you in trouble, and words are hurtful. And we'll explain to them, when I was growing up, is that somebody came up with this, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I don't know who invented that saying, okay? It was foolish when whoever they told us, our parents told us that, don't worry about it, words don't hurt you. Words do hurt. And in 2020, they get you in trouble. And then the last two, we'll talk to them about the older students, that technically possession of child pornography and dissemination, we'll explain to them dissemination is to give it to someone. Is the possession part and dissemination, they're felonies, although Massachusetts is trying to make a misdemeanor for a certain age bracket, which would include the students that we're talking about, that it's still improper, it's still against the law, but it wouldn't be a felony that will follow you the rest of your life. They just haven't done it yet, so hopefully they will. But we'll explain to them that anyone under 18 years of age in a state of nudity, a state of undress, and you possess that you technically are committing a crime. And then if you send it to someone, you've committed a second crime. We have a video that I think NetSmart or somebody put out, where it's, question and answer. Somebody texts a young lady, send me a hot picture, and she's going to be on her phone, and then it will pop up, should she or shouldn't she? And all the kids, you get some that will giggle, but that's in every district we go to, say no. Then you'll hear the one say yes. Then they show it where she does not send anything. And that's the right way to do. And then the next one is, what if she does? And then of course, sends the picture, that person shows it to someone, the next thing you know, it's viral. It's throughout the whole school. And they'll show it in this video of kids getting it on their phones in the hallway. They'll have little brother seeing it at home, having a cereal in the morning. Mom's on her laptop paying bills, and it pops up. And we'll explain to them, this is what happens, okay? Is you have to think. The first question is, you shouldn't have been asked for it, okay? Does that person really think much of you asking for that? So, look at, the total picture of it. And again, some students aren't affected by this. Again, the training we've gone to is, they'll say, might not be that big a deal. And it's like, well, maybe it isn't that big a deal, but if you talk to every school resource officer in this state, they're going to tell you it is a big deal. Because one parent is going to be quite upset. And then once the parents are involved, it's a big problem. And you have to do something about it. So, again, we try to just tell them, use your head, it shouldn't be asked for, don't send it. Because once it's out there, it's out there. And again, the technology is great if we use it the right way. I mean, I can't wait to see what they invent next. I mean, I have an iPhone. It's great. For me, it does what I want. I can get my emails. I can watch all my news. I can read, whatever I want. I can listen to music. And my children even text me. So they don't call anymore, but they do text. So it's a great tool. But, we have to use it the right way. And again, we just keep, reinforcing that once it's out there, you can't get it back. And again, I've explained this already, and, we just want them to be safe and not to get themselves, into trouble in today's world. And again, what can you do? I think if you talk with your students, tell them what your concerns are and what you think is proper behavior. I mean, they know what proper behavior is, but they're kids. They're going to try to see what they can, get away with. Clean up the social media, the likes. People like seeing the likes. So we try to tell them, if you're going to be communicating with that person, then like it, because otherwise they're going to get upset that nobody liked what I sent out there. So, or don't be friends with them. And again, the GPS settings are big. They shouldn't be letting people know where they are at all times. Passwords. And again, I guess, if you look at all the different apps, there's a lot of apps out there that can get the student in trouble. And you should probably know what they have. Now, just to let you know, like I say, years ago when we started this, they were all on Facebook. So the parents went and got Facebook so that they knew what their kids were doing. Well, the kids are smarter than us. That was the mom and dad Facebook page. They had the other page for their friends. So again, they're always one step ahead of us. And again, follow the page. Yeah, well, make sure that they don't have other pages that you can't follow. And again, what should you be on and what should you post and what should you be sharing? Lead by example. I think that's, a great bit of advice, but I mean, the world is a fast-moving world, so everybody's online. I'll go into restaurants and people will be sitting down with a family and all four people are on their phones. I found myself doing the same thing. I guess that we should have, these zones, or hey, shut that thing off during dinner or whatever. One thing when we talked with the students, and we started this, like I say, 9 years ago, we'd ask them who is on their digital device, whatever it may be, a gaming machine, a laptop, a tablet, your phone, once you've said, I'm going to bed, and the hands are all up. And we'll say, okay, who's on it at midnight? The hands stay up. Who's on it at 1 o'clock in the morning? The hands are still up. Who's on it at 2? Most of the hands are down. That was 9 years ago. Today, all the hands are up, and they're up till 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, because that device is in their room. We tell parents, why don't you have a policy where you take all the devices, okay, and you charge them somewhere that it's charged and ready for you to go tomorrow morning, but you're not on it tonight. I mean, we've had some kids that will take it in the shower with them. In the old days, they put it in a plastic bag. Now they're waterproof, okay, because they're afraid, what are they missing? More importantly, I think they're more nervous about who's talking about me. Okay, so again, I guess it's up to us to kind of lead them down the right path so that they don't get themselves in trouble. And again, we have parents that will ask, well, what software is out there? Some of this might have changed, but you can go online and Google, software, monitoring for parents. Some of it is free, some of it you have to buy. And again, it's different. I'm not even sure if some of these are still out there, but,
I'll cover some of that.
Okay, great. Oh, yeah, and most effective, I guess we're supposed to be open and honest conversations. So I think that's the way to go, but it takes both parties to be open and honest. So it's tough, okay? The hardest job I ever had in my life was being a parent. okay? It's a tough job. And, again, it's just trying to show them that this stuff is great, it's a great tool, it's amazing what they're inventing. I was just telling Joy before we got going that we haven't bought a car in 10 years, bought a new car. The thing almost drives itself. It's scary. I've never had so many buttons and, lane departure. I'm going to have to learn how to shut it off. Okay, because coming back on Cape the other night, no traffic. Well, if there's no traffic, I'm not putting my directional on. And I went from lane to lane to lane, and in my little window in the speedometer area, a coffee cup popped up, telling me, time to take a break, because you're, in and out of the line. So, it's amazing, what are they going to invent? So again, I think we have the conversations with our children, with our students, and just try to explain to them that if you use it properly, it's going to be great. If you don't, you're going to get yourself in trouble. And this is who we steal everything from. NetSmarts is really good. You can get online and look at all the different stuff. Some of the handouts, I think, are from them. The internet research, they do stuff on every subject in the world. They're great. And that's who we thank every time we do a presentation. Otherwise, they might be coming after us. All right. So that's my end of it.
Does anybody have any quick questions for Bill specifically before we move on to Melissa and Jim? And I will post this whole presentation on the website so you'll be able to access all those links that you just showed on the slide.
Question?
Quick question. My son plays Xbox. Are you fairly confident that Xbox is as safe as they claim to be?
I'm not confident in anything
Okay.
that's digital.
I can comment on that.
Okay.
I will tell you that I found out that, so Xbox, I told my kids, I have girls, I said, you're not allowed to private chat anybody. They're like, oh, well, there's no private chatting. But there are some games that they allow teams to talk, so they can get around it. So if they set up a team with one person, then that they have friended, then the two of them can talk privately. So you have to be careful of that. Xbox, my kids play Xbox, and they don't chat privately with anyone. It's on a leaderboard or message board, so everybody can see. So usually if everybody can see it, it's, I think, pretty much okay, but there are some apps, some games that allow those two-person teams. And no, I think that's like Ball Stars and some of the other apps. Okay. So I think Xbox is pretty safe. I don't know if anybody else can comment.
Well, I would just caution that even with the Xbox Live, that you're gaming with people you don't know, and you're still having an engagement. So my son, and he's 25, but
Yes.
whatever. But that was one of the things that annoyed him the most. Is I would go and interrupt. Who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? Who is that? What are you talking? Because nothing. I wouldn't ever say something is always safe when you're engaging with people you actually do not know face to face. So it's just about monitoring and having that open, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about too. So.
Thank you.
All right. Good luck.
Great,
Thanks.
Thank you. And now I'll introduce Melissa McGuire. She is our Director of Student Services for the district. I'm going to tell her that she can go super quickly because she'll soon hear that she's quite sick. So I gave her permission to zip right through this as fast as she needs to. So hopefully she'll still be standing at the end.
Yes, I promise I will be. I think Bill talked a little bit about this, but I do teach a course, and it's actually part of our anti-addiction course through BotFin. So it's an 8-part session. I think I'm coming up in February, but one of the sessions I really talk about is the piece about how are we communicating with our children and how are we listening to our children, because those are two different things, right? How do we listen, and how are we non-judgmental when our kids are trying to talk to us, and then how do we communicate back to them? So that's a really big piece. And making sure that with all of this, with all this digital piece, it's easy not to be interested in it because it's not our thing. And I try to keep, and I saw a couple doing it, I'm like, I don't know that one. I try to keep up on everything that's out there so I can be interested. And if you're showing interest, then your children are more apt to actually communicate with you. It's when you put them off or when you tell them not to do something, well, you know what happens because you were all at that stage as well, right? So it's really important to kind of show interest in what they're saying to you, what's important to them, but also think about, you know, how you're feeling about what they're saying too. So before you react to something, you know, take a moment to think about what you're going to say back to them, because the last thing you want to do is alienate your child, and it's really easy to do, especially when we start putting our foot down and start saying, well, that's no good, that can't be good for you, right? So we have to really think about how we're going to approach when our child is telling us they're doing something or they're engaged in something that we're really not aware of. And so those conversations have to be really important. You have to try to be non-judgmental. I always say to parents when we talk about kind of discipline, the first time your child does something wrong, most often they did it wrong because they didn't know the consequence or they didn't necessarily know it was wrong. Like when they said that F word the first time, when they were like 3, because guess what, they heard somebody say it, right? So think about, you know, what is your response to, do you understand the trouble that you might get in? You know, things that Bill talked about. Do you understand what you have done could cause X, Y, and Z? So making sure that you're listening non-judgmentally, but you're communicating in a way that you're teaching. It's a teaching opportunity to make sure your child understands the consequences. And as Bill said, our brain doesn't fully develop till we're 25, 26 years old, right? Socially, emotionally, it's just not there. And if they haven't had a consequence to something, you know, they're taking risks. Our kids in teenage years, they're learning to take risks, and they don't know necessarily what's going to result from their action until either A, there is a result, right? There is a consequence to it, or unfortunately, they keep doing it and there isn't a consequence. So it almost reinforces what they're doing, correct? So we want to be really open and honest and not react, but reinforce them. Thank you for sharing. You know, I tell my kids, they're older in the 20s and I still tell them, but when they were younger, you can tell me anything, and I promise you, I will not respond immediately. We might have a conversation later, but I need you to be able to tell me if you're in trouble. I need you to be able to tell me if you're at a party and someone's drinking and they want you to get in the car. I need you to be okay with calling me and knowing that I will come get you. Oops. That I will support you. So that's really important, because our first reaction in any of those situations is to get angry because we're scared. We react mostly because we're scared for our kids. And that's what ends up happening. You know, that's when either the yelling happens, the punishments happen, because we're afraid, we want to keep them safe. So I get that part. But we really want to make sure that they see that you're listening, you share with them, I heard what you said, and it's okay, you know, I'm really concerned about that, so I want to talk about that and what we're going to do next. But listen, listen, listen. And then if you feel like you're losing control, walk away. Say, you know what, we can't have this conversation right now. I need a break. Let's meet in 5 minutes. Please, that's like so hard, I know it is, but that's something you have to really practice. So what is parental monitoring? We're not our kids' friends. We're just not. We're their parents, right? And that's a hard concept, because sometimes we just want to be close to our kids, and that there's a difference between being close with your kids and being friends with your kids, right? So how do we really engage in a monitoring where it's going to keep your child safe? You're going to build trust with your kids. In any literature you read about child development, 2 things kids want is to feel safe and loved. We know that, right? Allowing kids to do things, allowing them to kind of, and I don't want to say do anything because that's not a judgment, but the more we allow kids to do, basically tells them we're not really caring about what they're doing, right? So we really want to make sure that we're paying attention to our kids, keeping track of who they're with. If they're going to friend's house, have you met the parents? Have you been in the house? Okay? Do you know the child that they're friends with? Those are all important things that we should know as parents. Who are our kids' friends? Who are they hanging out with? Where are they going? If they're going to a party, and this is in high school, I used to make my daughter FaceTime me when she got to her destination. I said, all right, I expect the FaceTime at, so I could see, and I could see exactly where she was. And you know what? Everybody knew. That's what she did. She used to laugh at it, right? So that was one of the ways that and it made her feel safe, because I knew exactly where she was. And her friends knew that I knew where they were. knowing what they're accessing on the computer, and I know Jim will talk about some of the different programs that you can use to safeguard computers or monitor computers, so that's really important. Making sure that there is supervision where they are, and that's, of course, one of the things we want to do is trust our kids, right? That's the bottom line. We trust them until they do something that doesn't make us trust them. Is that safe to say? So we want to start with that trust by making sure that we know, okay, where they are, who they're with. It's not that I don't trust you, okay? I don't trust anyone else out there. No, I'm just kidding. But I want to know who is there in case something happens. What if something happens to you? Who am I going to call? So making sure that there is supervision when that's appropriate, obviously for the younger ages, middle school age. High school, that gets really tricky because kids are staying alone home. Sometimes even middle school, they're staying home alone. So it gets really tricky if kids are saying, well, I'm going over Johnny's after school today at high school. Well, okay, but where is that? Who is that with? Is anyone? And it might be okay that no one's home, of course. My kids were home by themselves in high school. But what does that check-in look like? All right, why don't you give me a call at 5 just to check in and see what's happening so that they know you are, in fact, monitoring. So all of this really incorporates good family communication, for reinforcement and discipline. And that's a whole other tricky piece because that involves norms and values. Okay, what is important to you as a family in terms of how you're going to respond with reinforcement and how you're going to respond with some type of discipline. Okay, and again, setting limits is a really good thing. So once they know what the expectations are and the limits, that's going to be a really positive response from kids. It's when there's variable in those expectations is when it goes awry. Okay, so being able to set an expectation and having them part of that expectation, I am all about negotiation with kids. It's not about just me saying this is what you're going to do, this is what time you're going to be home, this is what I expect. All right, here's what I'm thinking. I expect you to be home at 8. And I know you're going to be with so-and-so, and this is when I expect you to check in. All right, Mom, well, how about 8:30? Because that's when so-and-so gets to stay up, whatever. That's a negotiation. I'm okay with that. I'm usually going to say something in the hopes that they're going to learn that skill because it's a valuable skill to negotiate because they're learning that there is an expectation and they can be part of what that is. And they're more apt to follow that expectation if they're involved in it. But it's certainly also when they're going beyond the expectations is how do you then set the boundaries and the limits for that, and what does that look like, okay, without ostracizing you from your child, because that's the part that I think you see the most is what happens was when parents are coming down so hard, they're grounding, you can't do this, you can't see that person. Well, guess what? When they leave the house, and when they go to school, and when they say they're someplace else, I would be more concerned that they're going to do those things versus having a real open and honest communication system with a level of expectations that they respect and respect you for really monitoring them. So what are things that we can do to monitor? Again, who is your child spending time with and what are they doing? Getting to know the parents of your child's friends and keeping in touch with them about what the kids are doing. My son had a friend. He was not allowed to stay at that friend's house. And he understood why, and I talked to the friend about why and what my concern was about what happened in their house. And it was an honest conversation about sharing, I don't have the same rules you do in your house, and that's okay, those are your rules. And I completely respect that, but my rules are a little different. And so I'm happy to have you at my house, love you being here, but it was and it was tough for the mother when I had the conversation with her. Explaining to her, but my rules are different and I respect yours, but they're just not the rules that I feel my child would be, safe with or what we expect. So, and those are tough conversations to have. Making it very clear how you expect your child to behave and setting ground rules about what they do and where they do it. Again, it's always about kids don't know what they don't know, right? They don't know a rule if you don't share the rule or the expectation. They don't know the consequence of if you do this, do you understand what will happen? Really setting those up. Setting the rules on TV, video games, internet, music, etc. What is the schedule? What does that look like at home? And making sure that everybody is following that. As Bill said, oftentimes it's the adults that are engaged in this as much as the kids. And I too, it's interesting when you go to a restaurant, you see everybody on their phone. It's interesting to watch that, like where's the conversations happening. So making sure that you have rules for that. Making time for discussing everyday activities such as having family meals together. That's really hard in this day and age because we have so many families who are working 2 jobs or working jobs that are, past dinner, and that family dinner time, dinner bell at 5 o'clock is kind of a long gone thing. And I know myself, like if we look tonight, where are we tonight? I've been here since 8 o'clock this morning, right? My kids are older, so I'm not having dinner with them tonight. But besides the point, that's often been the case. I've worked late. But the schedule, there was always a schedule, okay? Always like a consistent, we're always gonna have, dinner, always Sunday dinner, always the routine and kind of the traditions of a family, making sure you have some. If you can't have dinner 5 nights a week, make it so there is some time where you can sit down and engage, and all the phones go in a bucket or wherever they might go. What's everyone doing? How is everybody? How was your day today? What's coming up? But really engaging in that communication. So when you're thinking about really setting the expectations, or maybe even creating a contract with your child, making sure that you're really clarifying what the issue is. So the contract is, something has happened, so now we really need to put something in place to support you, okay? We need to figure this out because if you do this again, you're going to get hurt, someone else is going to get hurt, you're going to get in trouble, whatever the case is. So we're going to put a contract together, right? What's the issue? Okay, I need you off, if it's the device issue, okay, I need you off your device from, some 7 p.m. to, whatever, 8 a.m., I'm just making that up, okay? And if you're not and you're on at these times, all those things that Bill just told you about, those are the things that could happen, right? So that could be one issue, whatever the issue is. Establishing the general rules. We all have access to the social media sites you're accessing. I had the passwords to my kids' sites. And if there was something new out, I would ask. I wouldn't wait. I'd say when that Snapchat thing came out, I'm like, do you know about Snapchat? Like I'm asking, educate me. I'm asking my kids to educate me on that. Oh, yeah, let me show you. I'm like, oh, great, I'll have the password to that one too. And yes, Bill's right, they certainly can make pseudo, pages as well. But it comes in again with that open, honest communication with your child. If you're building that level of communication and trust with your child, it mitigates the need for them to go and do something behind your back because you've already set the stage that you have this honest communication with them. Spell out the specifics, how will everyone meet the rules, what is everyone responsible for. So, and it's not just putting everything on the kid, right? It's about us too. What are our rules to go along with this? So I'm expecting you to do this, and I also will do that. I also will put my phone down and will not, use it when we're either at dinner, when we're, I was going to say in the car, that wasn't the right example. I won't do that either, but, if we're out someplace, but, having the rules for yourself as well. And then what happens if you break the contract, okay? So the consequences are real important to share with your kid up front when they're going to do something, because after the fact, what happens? What happens when all of a sudden you're in the heat of the moment, you're grounded for 10 days for something that just happened? How does that set the stage for your relationship with your kid?
Disaster.
Not so good. It's harder to recover versus if we're setting expectations and consequences in advance. So I already know this in advance. This is what's going to happen. So it's not a surprise, okay? So they know what's going to happen when they break these contracts. And that is just a 101, because I know Bill talked a lot about, things that you can do, but really it's all about the monitoring, the communication, non-judgmental listening. You got to practice it, because sometimes your kids are going to tell you something that's just going to be like, oh, right? And it's hard not to have that, right, that face like, okay, I'm grateful you're telling me this. So now, let's figure out what we can do to keep you safe. Right? I'll never forget the night my daughter came home and, well, no, she didn't come home. She called me first. She goes, Mom, my friend's ODing. I called the ambulance. I said, okay, great. Where are you now? Who is with you? The ambulance came. and they were great to her. The parent came, blamed my daughter for the girl ODing, right? She just happened to find her because her friends went and said, Susie Q, that's not her name, but Susie Q is out in the woods and we don't know what's wrong with her. And I was so grateful in that moment that she was able to pick up the phone and call me, because not only for that experience for that girl, that she knew what to do, but she could tell me about it. And was she drinking too? She was drinking too. But we had the relationship that we built for her to be able to call me and tell me what happened. We were able then to follow up with the police the next day and with the girl and with the family. So that's like probably the most scariest thing I've been through with my daughter. But it was because all along, you know, I didn't think she was going to be an angel forever. I knew, listen, I'm a DUI girl. You know what we did, okay, when I was a DUI? I'm just saying, we know what we all did when we were teenagers, right? And we can't ignore the fact that kids are going to experiment, kids are going to take risks. It's how we as parents learn from what we know we did, and how do we build that relationship and trust with our kids to really, really protect them to the best of our ability and make sure that they're always safe. So that's my kind of 101 for some monitoring tips. So, any questions? And if you want the full one, it's coming up in February. It's on the website.
Well, thank you, Melissa. And next we'll have Jim Birchfield, who is our Director of Instructional Technology, and he'll talk about some of the more specific tools and things.
Okay. Yeah, so pretty much everything you've heard so far is more about, like, you know, using these technology tools, consequences, that side of things. But I thought I'd cover some more of the technical side of, like, the tools that we use in the district, how we protect the kids online when they're in school. And if you have a high school student that takes a Chromebook home, we also have ways to help keep them safe at home. So I'm just going to cover more of the, like, kind of real techie stuff. So we're a Google district, which means we use Google Apps for education, and it's free for the district. And it basically is a platform that allows us you know, to use email, documents. It's kind of like an office suite. It's all online. And Google provides this to education for free. So it's a huge cost savings for school districts. And most of the districts that I come in contact with use the Google platform. So it's fairly ubiquitous at this point. It's kind of either Google or Microsoft. Microsoft was a little bit late to the game in terms of catering to education and giving out their tools for free. So Google kind of grabbed the lion's share at the beginning, and they still kind of dominate the education space right now. So, but regardless, we're a Google district, and the question that comes up a lot is, you know, you hear it in the news a lot. Google's kind of, you know, they're constantly advertising. They're tracking you with their algorithms, and they know, like, every move you make. But so you go online, and then, you know, on the sidebar on the web page, it's got, like, advertisements for things that you looked at like 5 minutes ago. And you're like, oh, wait a minute, you know, where'd that come from? And so it's like they kind of get inside of your head almost, it feels like. And people, quite a few people are concerned, like, oh, are they tracking our kids if we're using their tools in school? So one of the things I wanted to do was just sort of put aside, you know, concerns about that, because they do, and I can't expect you to really see this or read too much of it, but there's a link here. We're going to provide all of this to you guys. If you leave an email address, we'll send you a link to the slideshow, and we'll have all the links to the stuff we're talking about tonight. So Google has, like, a basic setup for education where they don't put advertising in any of the tools. They don't track what the kids are doing. So all the stuff that happens in, like, your personal Gmail, let's say, in that world, does not happen in the education space. So I just wanted to make sure people understood that. So they keep everything secure. All the data that's kept from everybody in our district is our data. We own it. So at any time, we can go to Google and say, we want everything. Like, we want all the data that we've produced using your tools. We want to download it all, take it all back, and shut off the service. And anytime if we want to do that, we can. Also, if a student leaves the district, like the seniors, when they're leaving, they have the option to take all of their data with them too. They can download it all, and then we suspend their accounts as soon as they leave, as soon as they graduate. So the data's secure, it's protected. That's something that's really important for us. They comply with all of the regulations that we have to comply with. So there's all these acronyms that are used, like SIPA, HIPAA, FERPA, all of these things. The one that we really focus on is SIPA, that's the Child Internet Protection Act. And we make sure that all the tools we use are in compliance with that. And so Google is in compliance. They make sure that all their services are compliant. And any of the tools we use for filtering, for instance, we make sure that all of those are SIPA compliant. So anyway, if you really want to look at it later on, you can go read all that stuff. But basically, you don't have to really worry about the privacy stuff with Google. They're not tracking, and they're not putting out any kind of advertising in any of the tools that we use. So that's something that's very important, I think. The other thing that we use is, come up here in a second, it's called Securely, and it's our web filter that we use for Chromebooks. And we have two levels of web filtering at school. Like one of them is within the district on our network, we have what's called a firewall, and that firewall has a filter built into it. And it has all these different categories, and those categories have different, like, allow this, deny that. So anything that's inappropriate, it gets denied. Anything that's educational, it hopefully gets through. If somebody has an educational site that they need access to, they can come to me and say, hey, I need this, and I can look at it and say, oh, okay, that's fine, we can allow that. So Securely is the system that we use for the Chromebooks when they go home. It also works in the district when they're at school, but it's exclusively for the Chromebooks. And so when the kids are at home with the Chromebooks, and this is only the high school kids really, there's the only thing they can do is sign into their Google account with the Chromebook, and Securely is always on whenever they sign on to their Chromebook. So even at home, it'll monitor. It doesn't monitor, but it filters. So that's a big distinction. I shouldn't say monitor. Monitor is like where you can see what's going on. Filtering is basically just blocking stuff that's inappropriate. Yeah.
So can they access a browser through the Chromebook at home, or no?
Access.
A browser, like Google or?
Yeah, oh yeah. They can access their Google stuff for the district, but they can't go into their private, like if they have a private Gmail, they can't access.
They can't get onto the internet?
They can get on the internet at home if you have internet. So I'll kind of explain it. So a kid takes a Chromebook from the high school, goes home. At home, if you have internet and he can connect to it or she can connect to it, they are on the internet, but they're going through their Chromebook, which only allows them to access the district tools. So they're signed on to their district Google account, which means they can only open up whatever they've got. Basically, they can only get to whatever they can get to here.
But they can do web searches.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But
Yeah,
just
that's the
sites will
question.
be blocked. Like
Right.
they could go to
Yeah.
Wikipedia or something,
Yeah.
but they can't go to like an adult site.
Yeah, exactly. So the filter that's called Securely protects them when they're at home on your internet.
Got it.
So it's still being kind of filtered and protected. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Sorry, it gets kind of complicated sometimes. So you can kind of rest assured that when they take that Chromebook home, they can't just kind of surf freely anywhere they want. Those sites will be blocked if it's not appropriate.
So could they go onto Facebook from their Chromebook at home?
Yeah. So this is a kind of a catch, is that the district has a Facebook page and an Instagram account and Twitter, and so it's hard for us to, and a lot of information flows through those portals, so we kind of have to leave those open.
Right.
So that is a bit of a tricky one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that's something that, that you guys could say no to if you want to, and just say, you guys, no Facebook, no Instagram. If that kind of puts it on you at that point where you'd have to be the monitor, like what Melissa was talking about, is just kind of paying attention to what they're doing. But we do block Snapchat, that one, because we don't use Snapchat for the district in any way, shape, or form. And that one's definitely more, I don't know, that one's a little bit, there's a lot of potential there for things to go bad.
Yeah.
Whereas the other stuff, it's a little easier to, we monitor and archive all the social media. So the Facebook, social, Twitter, and Instagram, at least for the district, we archive all of that. But at home, you would have to kind of keep an eye on that. Okay. Another question. Did you have a question?
Oh, I think my name's.
You can come back around. If you think of it, just let me know. Yeah. So anyway, Securely is a great filter, and it covers them while they're at school and when they're at home. So at least if they're trying to go to a site that they really shouldn't go to, it'll block it. And then the other tool we've got that we're using now is Securely Classroom. And Classroom is a way for the teachers in the class to monitor what the kids are doing on the Chromebook. So when they go into a class, the teacher opens up Securely Classroom and they can see little thumbnail shots of every single Chromebook in the classroom. And they can basically control the device. So they can push out a website to all the Chromebooks in the class. They can lock them all down at the same time. They can see if one kid's trying to play games, do something he shouldn't do. They can lock that down or send a message. It gives them a lot more control over what happens in the classroom with the device. Yeah.
The kid is trying to use the email, school email, and write to his friend 2 desks away. This is boring.
Yeah.
The teacher sees that?
Yeah, I mean, they can.
Could see it?
Yeah. So basically, if whatever they're doing on their screen, the teacher has like a little thumbnail picture of it and they can see it. And if they catch that, they can just kind of shoot a message to the kid like, hey, get back on task, or they can actually close the tab, or they can lock down the Chromebook. So we've got some nifty tools that help us kind of manage the technology. So A, that they stay safe, that's the main thing, and then B, that it becomes something that's really used appropriately in the classroom. It's an instructional tool. It's not just some kind of toy that they can play with. So we've got these in place, and it really makes a big difference. Any questions on those? And this is a list of sites that are really helpful. The DA's office was talking about a few of these, but these are all links. So when you get this, you can click through them at home. But these are all different sites. Common Sense Media is an excellent one. They just have tons of material on there to help parents help their kids make really good choices when it comes to consuming media, because that's a really tough one. There's so much out there to be consumed that it's hard to decide like what's really good, what's not good, what's safe, what's not safe, what's appropriate, what's not. And Common Sense Media, which is the second one down here, is just loaded with all kinds of free resources for parents. So I would definitely check that one out. There's a Facebook Parents Portal that helps you kind of, if the kids are using Facebook, it helps you with their privacy settings and making sure that what's being seen out in the public is only what you are okay with being seen. So that's a handy little tool there. Bunch of different ones for online safety, but down at the bottom, let's see if I get down there. We've got a few. There we go. these last three are like how to lock down your network at home. So it's kind of, there's sort of two pieces to all this. You can do the thing Melissa was talking about, where you really like kind of having an open rapport with the kids about what they're doing. But there's also another side if you want to kind of lock things down at home, like kind of like what we do at school. You can sort of like say, if a kid's misbehaving with a device, we can basically lock it down and say, you've lost your privilege temporarily until, we feel like it's time for you to get that privilege back. The same thing is possible at home. You can get some of these tools, and one of them is put out by Securely. And Securely, I like Securely because they focus on education. So it's really about protecting the kids, being focused on educational resources, and they also like to pull in the parents to help with all this stuff too. So they've got a whole kind of parent piece that you can tap into, and one of them is a device that you can get at home and kind of connect it to your network, and it will allow you to control like who accesses the network, and you can put hours, like when they're allowed to access it and not. So you basically can set up parameters that you can say, all right, at midnight, and this was the problem Melissa was talking about, or I think the DA or somebody was saying that there's kids like at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, they're online. I guess if they have a cell phone with data, that's a little harder to control, but if it's a Wi-Fi device in the home, you can lock it down. You can just say, at midnight, this network that's the kids' network at home gets shut off, like the internet is shut off at midnight, and then there's no way that they can get onto it. So there's a couple of tools like that you can use at home. They're a little geeky in terms of like you have to set them up. They're not totally plug and play. This one's probably the closest to sort of a plug and play. I think you just connect it to your router, and somehow it configures itself, and then there's a web browser interface that you can go onto, and you can configure it. So
if you have Comcast for internet, which most of us do, for better or worse, and you download the Xfinity app, you can do it that way as well. So you can every single device, from TVs to laptops to phones to video games that use the internet, you can have them each listed, and you can set sleep hours for them, you can turn them, you can pause them, you have a lot of control over that sort of thing, which can be helpful too, to just sort of set those parameters.
yeah,
You can do
that's a
it
good one.
in phone though, right? I mean,
Yes, and then depending on the phones, iPhone has the screen time, which you can set screen time so that you have a password and the
you
child
can
doesn't
shut all
have
the
a
apps off
password.
at a certain time as well.
Yep, yeah, and you can do all of that. I mean, it takes a little kind of poking around to figure it out, but there are ways to do that. And even some of the cell phone providers offer that service, like Verizon Wireless has some parental controls. You can kind of track things and turn service off and on. And so there are lots of different ways you can kind of control those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I forgot about Comcast. That's a good one. Yeah, so there's another one, OpenDNS is another one that it's free, you can sign up for it, and basically it allows you to control like how your internet flows in and out of your house, and you can put restrictions on like who's using it and when, that kind of thing. So, and again, all these links will be provided to you so you can check them out. But so there is that option too, if you're so inclined to kind of take control over your own network at home. It's not a bad idea. It just makes you feel a little bit better. Late at night there aren't people like in your house surfing on the internet when it's like 3 or 4.
Lessens the temptation too sometimes, if the kids know like there's no Wi-Fi after 10 p.m. or whatever the case may be, it just cuts out some of the potential for misbehavior, even if you have those conversations and trust them.
Yeah. So we figure we'd try and cover kind of both sides, like the tech side and then the sort of the managing, the soft side of managing like the relationship when it comes to technology. So that's kind of all I've got, unless you had any specific questions. No? All right, well, thanks for coming.
No, everybody's
Thank you.
So thank you. And I just wanted to share, when we were researching for this, I read an analogy that really helped me as a parent kind of think of this whole new world that we're all dealing with. And it compared technology to driving. And it said that, you know, a car is a really powerful tool that does lots of great stuff. And we love to have it, and most of us couldn't live without it. But it also comes with some pretty serious risks. And kids take driver ed, and they take a test, and there's all sorts of steps they go through and education they receive about how to use that tool. But so often they're just handed a smartphone or a laptop without that sort of education. And it's just as powerful a tool that can do so many great things. I mean, it does wonders for a lot of things in our lives. But I think taking that same approach to actually sitting down, like Melissa mentioned, talking to your kids about how you use these technologies. What are the expectations? What's good digital etiquette? Like, what do we expect as a family for you to post on your social media? You know, all those conversations. Kids don't know this stuff innately, and it was revelatory for me to think of it that way, that they need to be taught how to use it just like they have to be taught how to drive when they're 16. So that's my parting thought. So if you don't have any more questions, thank you all so much for being here. Make sure you grab the handouts that are there. And we'll post all this information on the website hopefully tomorrow, and make sure you have access to all those links so you can follow up.
We gave our emails, so we'll get them
Yep, once
automatically.
Yep, we'll send it to you on